everyone, and Happy New Year. I hope that this New Year we will have the opportunity to meet in the real world. Yes, I will just present very shortly Mouans-Sartoux. Mouans-Sartoux is a municipality of 10,000 inhabitants located in the southeast of France, close to Cannes. Maybe you know the International Movie Festival. It means that because Mouans-Sartoux is located on the French Riviera, they are facing with a strong land pressure. And many municipalities have chosen to attract a lot of new inhabitants to develop intensively the municipality with a short-term vision and so on. But Mouans-Sartoux, for almost 30 years, has made another choice. They have really decided to have a long-term vision strategy, and they have developed action to maintain agricultural land and to have a sustainable development strategy. And Thibaud will give us more information about that. But what I wanted to say as an introduction, that is really that Mouans-Sartoux in France is really a pioneer, because if they have really enthusiastic and if they have really good results with the policies, this is because they have chosen another way to develop the municipality 30 years ago. And they were really in the region, they were really the only one to have made this choice. And now more and more municipalities for several years, but especially this year with with the COVID-19 pandemic, I think many municipalities are more and more interested in this experience of Mouans-Sartoux, and it's not too late, of course, for them. I hope so. And yes, and now I give the floor to Mouans-Sartoux in order that they explain you more in details this long-term vision strategies that they have chosen and what they concretely do every day. Thibaud, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Séverine.
It was a teaser for
Thank you very much, Séverine. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the nice introduction that caps it all, I think. I will briefly share my screen so that we can start the presentation. Okay, here you go. I hope you all have your cup of coffee. I don't know whether you can see on the screen if you're ready for the cafe. And I'm very glad to host you, at least virtually, in Mouans-Sartoux for this morning. I really hope that we will be able to host you in the real world, as Séverine mentioned it, in the coming month. So as it was presented, my presentation today, and I will try to keep it brief so that we have time for exchanges, questions and answers, is to show you how Mouans-Sartoux built its food project and how mainly it started from school canteens to build a resilient local food project. So it was already said, Mouans-Sartoux is located in the southeastern part of France, so you can see on the map, close to the Italian border. And if you had the chance, if you had a chance to come today in Mouans-Sartoux, what would you have seen? You would have seen basically all this on the slides: a municipal farm, pedagogical gardens, family gardens, community gardens, incredible edibles, many education actions towards sustainable food, and the presence of an association working on social inclusion with market gardening. Mouans-Sartoux, in terms of the location, is located, as you can see, on the upper side of the upper part of the slide, on the French Riviera, in a triangle between three big cities: Cannes, Antibes, and Grasse. It's quite an urbanized area with a strong land pressure, as it was already said. And Mouans-Sartoux is a rather small town of a bit less than 10,000 inhabitants. but historically is quite linked with the mountainous areas nearby Grasse, as you can see it's in French, but you can, I think, understand. And historically, Mouans-Sartoux is very much involved in the fragrance industry. You might know that Grasse in France is the historical center of the perfume fragrance industry. And we had many perfume lands with production of flowers besides agricultural production, which progressively over the years, because of the economic development of the coast and the arrival of many inhabitants, which lands that we progressively lost over the years. But however, the municipality is very much engaged in protecting these lands and in developing a strong local food project. So today, very briefly, this is quite a short panorama of what we call our local food project. So what do we have? We have 100% organic school canteens. There is a S missing actually, because we have three canteens, three different schools that distribute around 1,300 meals per day. Around 70% of the food produce distributed in the school canteens come from local suppliers. Those school canteens distribute 2 vegetarian meals per week. And one thing which is very important and I would like to stress is that we managed this switch to 100% organic at constant cost. So it costs the same to distribute 100% organic meals to school kids. Why? And this is something I will show you afterwards, thanks to a dramatic reduction of food waste and a better management of our canteens. And of course, there is also a big commitment towards the reduction of plastics, and we manage somehow, despite some margin of adjustment still existing, to be zero plastic canteens. So this is the canteens, that the core basically of our food project, but it's much more than that. We also have developed 10 years ago now, a municipal farm that distributes supplies around 85% of the vegetables consumed in the canteens, which is located nearby the city center, so around 3 kilometers maximum from the canteens. We also have a very highly committed urban planning policy with which is marked, as it was already said, by the willingness to protect agricultural lands. And often Mouans-Sartoux, it's important to note that Mouans-Sartoux in the French Riviera is often considered as, for those who are fan of Asterix and Obelix, the little village of Asterix trying to fight against the Roman invaders. And basically always taking the opposite path to all the others. And despite accepting the construction of many households, residential buildings, etc., in 2012, for instance, with the last urban plan, elected representatives decided to triple the number of agricultural lands on the territory, passing from 40 hectares to around 110 for a rather small territory, which was quite a revolutionary move at that time. And also we have, so as to steer this food project at the local level, we have a Maison d'éducation à l'alimentation durable, so a Center for Sustainable Food Education, which is also a sort of innovation, I would say. It's a municipal department only exclusively dedicated to food policy at the local level, which steers the local food project. And I will come back to that afterwards as well. And an important point in this panorama is that, as Séverine was already said, this policy was built over 2 decades, basically. And we now can measure the impact of this. And we know, thanks to our surveys that we have every 3 years, we know that 85% of families have changed their food habits thanks to these canteens, thanks to also all the educational actions that we've put in place, etc. So we can measure already the impact of this on the ground. So where do we come from? Where does this project come from? The main trigger was the mad cow disease in 1998. With elected representatives really realizing the impact of such a disease on health and the linkages between food and health, and started thinking, how can I, as an elected representative, change this with the competence of my municipality? and they realized that canteens basically is a core competence of the municipality in France, at least. So they decided to act through the canteens at first. Also, their mindset changed thanks to a strong dialogue that existed with scientists and intellectuals at that time. It is important to note that the former mayor at that time was also member of the parliament, and he was also working on and he was also deeply involved in working on this field. He is also at the origin, for instance, of the French National Agency on I don't know how to translate that, sanitary, the links between food and health, which is called ANSES. And thanks to this work at national level, so he had to meet lots of scientists, intellectuals, etc. It enriched its vision of public policy at local level and how to change this in Mouans-Sartoux. Also, this dialogue exists on a yearly basis, I would say, thanks to our book festival. You can see a picture on the right-hand side of the slide. We have a big book festival, except last year, unfortunately, because of the COVID, and I'm sure you all knew that we had to cancel it, unfortunately. It's the first weekend of the month of October. We have many people coming, many intellectuals, debates, films broadcasted, etc. It represents around 60,000 people coming for a weekend in Mouans-Sartoux. It's around the fifth or the sixth biggest book festival in France. So it's a huge cultural event for us and for the region. And it was a great moment for us to, for instance, welcome Pierre Rabhi, Cyril Dion, very highly involved people in the green movement or ecological movement, I would say, in general, so as to engage in debates and dialogues with the population. So all these trigger a new vision of public policy at local level, and so as to integrate, to design new public policies, taking into account these health issues and environmental issues. And this had impact, of course, on the design of policies towards school canteens and urban planning, agricultural policy, etc. So school canteens, I will pass it quite briefly on this. I just wanted to give you some figures and maybe we can discuss it at a later stage. One important point that I wanted to mention in this slide is the cost. We often have people coming to Mouans-Sartoux or municipality who wants to make some savings, on the cost, because it costs a lot for municipality. And I just wanted to show you the full cost per meal in Mouans-Sartoux. It's around 10 euros if you include animators. If you don't include animators, it's around 8 euros, more or less. Just to show you that in addition to the meal as such, we have a huge commitment in education. So we have around 80 facilitators, animators working in schools, so as to, during the time of the meal and also beside, of course, accompany kids during the meal, so as to tell them, okay, you have to eat. Why do you have to eat? What do you have in your plate? And you should finish your plate, etc. So engaging in dialogue with kids and also taking the feedback of the kids on the meal, which is also important because afterwards you have to build a dialogue between facilitators, animators, and the staff from the canteens, and also with the administration, so that you can adapt the way the canteens distribute meals and change your recipes, for instance. The share of the food produced in the meal in terms of cost it's around 2 euros today, which is within the national average in France. I don't know how much it is in your country, but I would be interested to know more about that, of course, afterwards. Just a ratio which is important. On the overall cost, foods represent only 25% of the overall cost, while staff and also maintenance, buying equipment, etc., represents around 70–75%. Meaning that if you want to make savings on the final cost of meals for your municipality, you shouldn't find it on food. You shouldn't sacrifice the quality of your food because of or in order to make savings on the cost of your meals. But on the other hand, you should try to think how to have more efficient school canteens and to find other way of adjustments. So for us, How did we reach 100% organic school canteens? As I was saying, it's thanks to a dramatic reduction of food waste. We managed to reduce food waste by 80% in 5 years, passing from around 150 grams in 2010 to around 30 in 2015, something that we managed to maintain, even though it's a daily fight. Huh? It's not gained, or it's never earned, I would say, which enabled us to save around 20 cents per meal, which was afterwards reinvested in organic food. And this on this graph, you can see that the overall price of food for one meal remained more or less stable between 2009 to 2012, when we managed to achieve the 100% organic. You can see at the end a slight increase, which is basically due to the fact that we switched at the end to meat. We started buying 100% organic meat, which is basically the most expensive produce. So also quite interesting thing is when you engage in this path, it's important to start maybe with the least expensive range of products that can give you already a good share of organic products. For instance, if you start with bread, if you start with pasta, and you start having 1% organic pasta, you can already achieve 25% easily of organic food in your school meals, and then leaving the most expensive ones maybe at the end. So food waste, how did we manage also to address this? An important point is might sound a bit ambitious to achieve this 100%. I wanted to stress also that it is also the result of very easy, simple actions that are quite straightforward to implement and that can give you quite easy, quick results. You can see some pictures and examples on the slide. So actions, for instance, on how to monitor food waste. So you engage children in sorting out and weighting food waste. You can see these different buckets where they sort out meat, where they sort out the dessert, vegetables, etc. And then these buckets will be weighted by the canteen staff, and then we have a person dedicated to collecting all this data, analyzing the trend on food waste, which will give us information on whether the recipes worked, whether there was an issue with a particular meal, or whether there was an issue with a particular element of the meal. Then we also decided to adapt the sizes of portions distributed to kids. All kids do not eat the same, or maybe they won't eat the same every day. So we have basically two types of portions. We have a small portion and a bigger portion. If children are not sure to eat because they are not very hungry, you have a facilitator asking them, so if you're not hungry, take a small portion, and if you still are hungry afterwards, you can come back and I will give you more. And then it's a way to also address food waste. Another example on this is not giving entire apples, for instance, to kids, but cut them into pieces and just giving pieces to children. If they are hungry, they can take more afterwards. So if you keep monitoring your recipes, the food waste, for instance, you can adapt afterwards the recipes to kids' tastes. Of course, you need to engage them in eating more vegetables, etc. But of course, so it's still a pleasure. Huh? Eating is still a nice quality time. So it has to be adapted to children's tastes. And then you have also some, let's say, actions that you can find within the kitchen, I would say, with adapted equipment that enable you to prepare meals, some part of the meals, I would say, or some ingredients at the last minute. Depending on the number of pupils coming to the canteens, you can adapt the quantity. So achieving this 100% canteen was as I already showed you, thanks to this food waste reduction, partly. But then there was another key, let's say, challenge to address. When elected representative and the staff decided to move to this 100%, they wanted to do that with local producers. But when organizing their public procurement, they published these bids, tenders to open to local producers. None of them answered. Why? Because we are now in a province, the Alpes-Maritimes, which is absolutely not with a low agricultural production. Unfortunately, we lost this agricultural production over the years, over the decades, meaning that no producer, organic producer, was able to address and to answer our bids. So the elected representatives thought that if they couldn't have any local producers delivering them, in particular vegetables, well, they could do that. Then the municipality could do that. And that's why, and that's how they decided to build a municipal farm. In more details, in 2005, also another sign of fighting the pressure on urbanization, pressure on land, on the territory, they decided to preempt one plot which was dedicated to building housing, residential homes, to protect it and to preserve it for agricultural purposes. At the beginning, in 2005, they didn't know that. We didn't switch to this 1% organic, so they just kept on the side waiting to see how they could use it. And in 2010, because of these issues with public procurement, they decided to launch this municipal farm, which represents around 6 hectares. Today, we have around 4 hectares cultivated, producing food. And we have 3 farmers employed by the municipality. One of them is a full-time civil servant. The other 2 are contractual municipal agents. And they produce on average 25 tons of vegetables per year, which are delivered to the canteens. And they cover around 85% of canteens' needs. And of course, another important point is that you need to adapt also the calendar, let's say, of production to the canteens and to engage in dialogue. So it's not only a dialogue between canteen staff and facilitators, but it's also a dialogue between canteen staff and municipal farm staff, so as to see how to best adapt the production with the consumption and etc. So then we move to urban policy. So it's important to note that all these actions, they modified the municipal view of how to approach urban planning. As I was saying, there is this great commitment to protect, there was this and still this great commitment to protect agricultural lands, which was demonstrating through the last urban plan and the tripling of agricultural lands in 2012. We still have, if I can be honest with you, we have managed to settle down 2 or 3 basically organic farmers since then, but it's still very difficult for us to settle down organic farmers. We are facing 2 big challenges. First of all is the access to private plots, because as I was saying at the beginning, we are, so historically we have a, how can I say that, the territory was dedicated to production of flowers for the fragrance industry, and also the peasants, the farmers at that time were living in the village and going to basically the plots to cultivate and were coming back at home at night, meaning that we don't have any we don't have any technical housing, for instance, for farmers on the agricultural land, which is now prohibited to construct so as to protect these lands in the urban plan code. So we have both a difficulty to access private plots, which are very small, divided in many landlords, and the difficulty to have housing for farmers if we want to install them. A third challenge that is not mentioned on this slide is the price. As we are on the French Riviera, the price of 1 square meter is absolutely dramatic. Just to give you an idea, it's around 10, 15 euros per square meter, which means that accessing this land, buying land, is a huge hurdle for youngsters, for instance, who want to install, or people switching careers, willing to start a new farm. So these are things that we are working on and we need to address in the future. We understand we are in a specific situation that not everyone in the community is facing, but it's a challenge for us. Maybe also a point on the way we approach urban planning. We talk about food sovereignty. We think that urban planning, the preservation of agricultural land, and the willingness to install farmers on the territory is driven by this objective. What do we mean by food sovereignty? Food sovereignty for us, it's way different from self-sufficiency. We are not looking for autonomous food production because, first of all, we know that we wouldn't be able to feed ourselves thanks to only Mouans-Sartoux based farms. That would be absolutely unrealistic, and it's not what we are looking for, because we don't want also to withdraw ourselves from the world. We think that we need to cooperate with many other territories. The thing is that what we mean with food sovereignty, we want to, I wouldn't say get back control, because that would be maybe confusing for to be able to decide what we put in our plates, to be able to decide to keep our competence on how to manage the distribution channels, and not to leave this power to put it simply, to big economic operators, because we build that so as to build resilient local food systems. We need big diversities of producers. We need close farmers which are closely based to consumers. So basically short supply chains, short distribution channels, and a diversity of production and diversity of selling points as well. And by engaging in this, taking back our competence as a municipality on this, we can adjust. So, and it's also the last point, which is important, not to think in terms of supply and demand, as we always think today in economical terms, in terms of markets, but to think more in terms of food needs and resources. So it means that in very concrete terms, so as to adjust our urban plan, we ask ourselves, what do our population needs in terms of food? So what is a basic sustainable diet that we should have so as to preserve our health and the planet? So it means that we need to reduce meat, of course, we need to eat more leguminous plants, and we need to eat more vegetables. And taking that into account, then you can understand, you can include in this equation the production ratio of other farms in the region, and then you can multiply by the number of inhabitants, and then that gives you some results. And we have calculated that for achieving autonomy, even though it's still an utopist objective, we would need around 120 or 30 hectares dedicated to vegetable production. And this is a core objective for us, which drives our urban plan and this policy of installation of farmers. But that means also that we are perfectly aware that we know we need to cooperate with the surrounding territories so that they also work on installing farmers. And this is particularly the case with the mountainous areas and the rural areas surrounding us. Which means that we need to work with other territories nearby. I hope I'm not too long. In case I'm too long, or you just interrupt me, and we can start the Q&A. Just let me know, Anna and Edina. So now I move to the local food project and how it is basically managed. As I was saying, we have a Center for Sustainable Food Education, which is a municipal department, which was created in 2016. We are a team of 5 people working on this project, working on these 5 big pillars. So agriculture, as I was mentioning it, local economy. We also work with local businesses, local selling points, etc. Education. Education is not only the pedagogical activities towards kids, but also to other publics. We also have many education activities towards families, households, and also specific publics such as the elderly or disadvantaged households. And research. It's very important for us to stay in contact with scientists, to stay in contact with the cutting edge, I would say, research, because it's a great source of inspiration for us. For instance, now we are working on the evaluation of the impact of our food projects, both, well, actually on all these dimensions, but also we are building now a survey on with the aim of evaluating, assessing the impact in terms of health for the population in general. So that's part of our sort of future activity. And also we work on dissemination, because we have several networks with which we accompany local authorities, towns, villages throughout France and Europe. And also we host many people, elected representatives and technicians, I would say, coming to visit us so as to better understand. The idea is not to transfer, to copy paste what we have, because we have a specific territory with specific situation, which is different from everyone else, but is to exchange and to see how all these ideas and way of approaching food project can, benefit from everyone. And also we gain a lot from these exchanges. A brief word on the food governance. So, as you understand now, there is a very ambitious vision and policy for citizens' health and the environment. We have the MEA team, so Maison d'Éducation à l'Alimentation Durable, so the municipal department, which has also a steering committee which meets twice a year, in which we invite scientists, as I was saying, financiers, but also local actors, not only from Mouans-Sartoux, but from the province, etc., citizens as well. We have also a group of citizens working, and even though it's another challenge for us, we want to build a more participatory governance. We are also a fair trade territory, because we are very much engaged in this field as well. And as I was saying, we are very much engaged, and I think that's the next slide, in networks for us. So very briefly, what are the present and future challenges? And then I will move to how we build the smart village strategy and how it basically was translated in concrete terms. So the big challenges for us now are the three ones that are highlighted in the slide: the social dimension, how to ensure that everyone has access to quality food on the territory, and addressing the tension that may exist between organic food and the prices. It's not because it's organic that it should be exclusive. We should fight on this inclusion to everyone. Working on citizen participation and food democracy, especially with let's say, the midterm objective of building a food policy council, which may not be only consultative, but in which people would have a real say. And then the third point would be the relocalization of food production. So as I was mentioning it, the settling down of farmers on the territory, but also on surrounding territories. Regarding the smart village strategy, for us, it was, as I think I mentioned in a previous event organized by the community, for us, it was very important to have one consolidated and streamlined document highlighting all the objectives that we have. The first main objective that we identified was the strengthening of the short supply chains between local producers from rural areas, from surrounding territories, and consumers in Mouans-Sartoux. But it didn't work. We got into contact with the local association of organic producers, and they told us that they already worked on this, and they actually faced quite a strong reluctance from local producers to cooperate among themselves. So we decided to switch to another key objective, which is basically supporting self-production, which is also part of our food sovereignty objective. And very briefly, and I can come back to that afterwards, the idea is to identify in a very participatory manner public and private plots that could be dedicated to self-production by small groups of citizens, autonomous, of course, to which we would provide trainings and, to a certain extent, equipment. But the idea is to build a sort of a community engaged in the same, of course, the same objective, with a solidarity dimension, which would be defined by the community of citizens, meaning that a share of the production of these groups would be given to people in need. We need still to define the mechanism with engaged citizens, And the smart, I would say, the digital note of this dimension of this project would be this online mapping activity with citizens, and we would like also to have a sort of a community-based platform on which maybe people could exchange, especially during these days where we all know that it's difficult to meet physically. I would say it's I think a good tool to have this platform. Yes. So just to tell you that in this dissemination project, we have developed a range of tools so as to support, facilitate basically the building of local food project by other local authorities, and I would be happy to share them with you. So this is, for example, a good practice that you could implement in school canteens. We have a catalogs about that. Regarding the SIM farm, we have in order to basically help cities designing their own municipal farm, we have developed a tool, a visual tool that we call the SIM farm, so as to better understand how our municipal farm is organized and how to better understand all the key elements that we can find on the farm. It's not only about production of vegetables, but it's also, you can see, maybe, I don't know whether you can see, but there are buildings, for instance, that are dedicated to welcome other elected representatives or local actors for meetings. There is a plot which is dedicated for educational activities. There is a building which is dedicated to the storage of food during summertime, which is the peak production, so as to keep it for the rest of the year, so as to distribute it in school canteen, etc. And this is a poster basically in PowerPoint that you can have access to, and if you're interested, you could build or design or think about how the municipal farm or a farm or platform, agricultural platform, could look like on your territory. And I would be happy to share it with you in few words, if I can, so as to exemplify our work also on food sovereignty. We have developed a similar poster on how to better understand what would be our needs and resources in the future, that we have entitled "What We Will Eat in Mouans-Sartoux in 2045", so as to also take into account the fact that we are facing dramatic challenges. Climate change, well, coronavirus is one challenge, but I think that in comparison to what we are going to face in the future, it's rather small. So we need to think in the long term. And we prepared this poster so as to position ourselves in the future. So how to calculate our local food needs. You can see on the right-hand side sort of a mere calculation, a mere method of calculation to calculate your local food needs. And I would be happy to share these tools to you as well. And then if you don't mind, Edina, just to share a word on an event that we will organize, and I would be very happy if the community or smart villages could also take part into this. We will organize an event towards local authorities in Europe, but also European decision makers, to show that it's not only about cities. You should take this in generic ways. Local authorities, towns, villages also are very pioneering, are leading movements for food sovereignty and food democracy in Europe, and that it should be taken more into account at national and European levels. So I will pass all this information to you afterwards, and I would be very glad if you could attend this event. And I think that's it.